Because of the lockdown laws, I haven't been able to have any chats with friends over cake. But I think I've found a solution. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a chat with an incredibly talented musician, and for that, we're going to need cake. I'm going to make a cake that was my absolute favourite when I was growing up. It's a banana cake, but I'm going to make it with a hazelnut buttercream and some walnut praline. First of all, I need to make the cake. Now this is a really easy recipe from the Edmonds cookbook. I've changed it a little bit. In fact, I've added a bit of yogurt to keep it super moist. First, we need to cream 190 grams of butter with 1 1/4 cups of white sugar. Then add 3 eggs, one at a time, until they're incorporated. Next, we mash up 4 bananas, add this to the mixture with about 1/3 cup of Greek yogurt. Now this doesn't happen often. I'm actually going to mix this cake by hand, not using my machine. I suppose this is a little bit like they used to do it in the olden days. Now the reason I've beaten that by hand is because I really don't want to over mix it too much, which will develop too much gluten and won't make it as light and fluffy. Now that we've got all that organised, I'm going to spray 2 tins and line them with a little bit of greaseproof paper. Then we're going to spoon in half mixture into each tin. You're probably wondering why I'm using 2 tins. I find the best way to make a layer cake is to use 2 cakes and join them together. It just means they cook faster and don't dry out as much. I'm also going to weigh the cakes to make sure I've got about the same amount of batter in each tin. Wait a minute, not quite right. Perfect. Make sure you smooth down the tops before putting them in the oven. Depending on the size of your cake tins and your oven, these should take between 20 and 25 minutes to bake. You might like to swap them around about halfway through. Right, my cakes are done. Now I like to leave these to cool, and then when they're still a little bit warm, wrap them up in Glad wrap and put them in the fridge. This makes them easier to cut later and easier to ice. But as soon as you want to serve it, make sure that cake is out of the fridge, because serving people cold cake should be illegal and come with a prison sentence. Now we're going to make the hazelnut buttercream. Put 250 grams of soft butter and 3 cups of icing mixture in your mixer and beat until it's combined and smooth. Then you can add some hazelnut spread and blend until it's all incorporated. How much you want to put in is completely up to you. When it's done, put it in the fridge until you need it. For a bit of extra crunch in this cake, I'm going to make some walnut praline. Now if you come down here, you'll see on a baking mat I've got a whole lot of walnuts that I've sort of broken into small pieces. I've got 10 walnut halves there. Now I have to make some toffee to pour over the top. Heat up 1 cup of white sugar and a few tablespoons of water until the sugar has dissolved. You might find you need to brush down the side of the pot with a wet pastry brush just so we don't get any burning into the sugar. Bring to the boil and wait until it gets to a nice amber colour. Then carefully pour over the walnuts and wait until it is completely cool. Once the sugar has cooled down, save the 10 walnuts for decoration and break the rest up into little pieces. Now we're ready to put our cake together. Whenever I ice a cake, I like to have everything very organised. One of the few times in my life I can tell you. So first of all, we've got our cakes. These have been sitting in the fridge for a couple of hours. If you can do this overnight, that's even better. So they're ready. A cake turntable, really useful. You don't have to have one, but it makes it very easy to cut. Obviously we need a plate to put the cake on in the end. Then an offset spatula, really useful for spreading icing. A knife for cutting the cake. A really big spatula for moving the cake once we've decorated it. Then we've got our buttercream here, all ready to go. If you've had this in the fridge, you may need to leave it sitting out on the bench or maybe just zap it in the microwave and then whip it, which is what I had to do. We've got our praline and we've got our individual little walnuts for decorating. So, here we go. Cut the tops off each cake, then cut them in half. We'll be using the bottom of one cake as the top layer. Put one of the bottom halves on a tray or a turntable and spread some buttercream on it, followed by a sprinkle of that crunchy praline. Continue this for the next 3 layers, ending up with our other bottom piece on the top. This gives us a nice flat top to the cake. Start to spread the buttercream around the sides of the cake and on the top. I prefer a naked look to the cake with less buttercream, so I'm going to scrape the sides back a bit. If you like more buttercream, put this in the fridge for about half an hour and then do another layer on top. Finally, pipe some buttercream on the top and garnish with our half walnuts. Welcome to Let Them Eat Cake. Now I've got an amazing guest today who's made a name as a singer, a composer, a songwriter and a cellist. Would you please welcome Craig Alistair Young.
Well, thank you for having me. Can we have cake now?
Not yet. I have to ask you some in-depth questions first.
If you must.
I do insist. Question number 1. When did you first realise you wanted to be a musician? Incredibly good question. But I'm not sure I want to be a musician yet. I haven't quite decided. But the first time I remember thinking, yes, I am going to be a cellist was in grade 10 at school. We sat around with the career counsellor or something or other, and we sat around in a group and everyone had to go and decide what they wanted to be when they grew up. Now, I knew I was going to be a cellist. It was pretty obvious. I was so good. But I was a bit embarrassed by that. So guess what I said? I said, I think I'm going to be a chef. Can you believe it? A chef. What a great story. But let's move on to question number 2.
Still no cake?
No, question number 2 first. What was your greatest achievement in your career so far?
That's a good question too.
It's a hard one because there's so many things. I suppose playing cello with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra for the past 30 years, that's pretty impressive. In 2000 I wrote a piece of music for the Olympic soccer event in Brisbane. There was about 4,000 kids running around on stage. It was just amazing. I did 4 seasons with the Queensland Ballet as musical director, where I actually orchestrated all the music and led from the cello. Yes, I know, impressive. And of course, for the past 8 years, I've been musical director for Brisbane Sings. We've got about 600 singers on stage. Pretty impressive stuff, isn't it? Okay, that's enough. Wait a minute. Spotty Kites. Well, I've been writing music for the label Spotty Kites for kids, and they keep on going to number 1. Oh, it's really hard. Seriously, that's enough. Oh, good, because I actually run out of things. Thank goodness for that. Question number 3, and there's no cake yet. What has been your biggest failure? Well, it's not a very nice question. It's really hard on me because a couple of years ago something horrible happened, something I don't think I'll ever live down. I played a wrong note. No, it's horrible. It was awful. I felt my life flashing before my eyes. It said E natural. I played E flat. I'm sorry. I can't believe you brought that up, you animal. I'm sorry. Go on, just keep. Keep going. Okay. Pull yourself together. How embarrassing. Okay, this is the last question before we get to eat the cake. Now, what is still on your bucket list? Well, lots of things really. I suppose I really want to finish that opera I've been writing and a musical, and I really need to finish my 12th symphony sometime. But I suppose when it comes down to it, I just want to continue being as fabulous as I've always been. Well, let's be honest, that wouldn't be too difficult. Are you flirting with me? Right, so here's the cake. I've made a banana cake, and I've got hazelnut buttercream and walnut praline. There we go. Right, dig in. Oh, this looks so good. Oh, there we go. That's so good. You know what? I'm really trying to watch my figure. I mean, I wouldn't want to get as fat as you. I'm just big boned. Don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube and find us on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, wait a minute, that was my line. The recipe is on musicalmenus.com.au. You're really enjoying that cake, aren't you? Oh, enjoy.